All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell, CRNA of 8 years. And today we have a special guest, Sabrina, who is a new SRNA. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hi, thank you for having me today, Jenny.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So you guys, I want to give some insight into Sabrina's story before we get started. But ultimately today, what we're going to discuss is getting accepted to CRNA school with having a pass-fail undergrad in your history. You know, a lot of people have either considered taking a course or courses at a pass-fail program or who already have their BSN in a pass-fail program. And many of you may be feeling discouraged or whether CRNA is even within your reach. And I just wanted to take this moment and enlighten you into Sabrina's story and how she still achieved success into getting to CRNA school with a pass-fail in her history. So Sabrina shared this really amazing story with us that we actually share on our social media on Instagram. So if you don't follow CRNA School Prep Academy, I encourage you to do so. We can share success stories there. But in January 2021, Sabrina, was working on a crisis contract, and she quickly jumped into taking the GRE, the CCRN. She also was taking organic chemistry and retaking statistics between February and the June 1st deadline. She applied to school. She crossed her fingers. She received an interview invitation for one of the two schools. However, she received a denial from the other. She had an all-day Zoom interview and was offered an alternate list spot a week later. So basically, she wrote off her chances of matriculating next year. She thought, well, I didn't get in. I got waitlisted. She just kind of said, well, this didn't happen this time. However, she was surprised to receive a voicemail from the program director, so much so that it took her an hour to get it together to return the call. And then she said 12 hours later, she read the admissions email at least 42 times before she convinced herself she actually was accepted into CRNA school. Some other really great history or some stats on Sabrina is that 3 years RN experience split between PICU and adult general ICU, 2 of which were as a traveler. She also has 5 years as an EMS and 3 as a paramedic with several year break between healthcare prior to nursing school, including a previous bachelor's degree. Her ASN GPA was a 3.8. She completed her RN to BSN at WGU, which is a competency-based program, so no GPA. However, her science GPA was overall a 3.7 with a 3.6 overall GPA. She also went on to get a 316 on her GRE, which is very good, 158 on verbal and quantitative, and a 4.5 on writing, which again is also very, very good. She took OChem at UNE. They do offer this online, which many of our students do take it at UNE. She managed to get an A-. She also shadowed a CRNA 36 hours in 2021 and 40 plus hours during the paramedic school airway rotation. And then her CCRN, just to clarify, is in PEDS. So yes, and she joined CRNA School Prep Academy and she did a personal statement review. She did a mock interview. So she owes a lot of her success to just having a good support system behind her. But she wants to reiterate the fact that if you have a BSN at WGU is not the end for you. That CRNA school is still a possibility. So thank you, Sabrina, for letting me share your story, and welcome. I always love having CSBA students on the show. So
yeah, thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Yeah, no, it's such an incredible story. And when I saw that, I was like, I have to talk to Sabrina and get some more information, because again, so many students feel discouraged, and some of them don't even want to apply because they're fearful of being rejected with this in their past. But I actually want to break all of this down, which is why I led with this as an introduction to the episode, because there's a lot of key things that stood out to me that I want to make sure I pass on as little nuggets, little gold nuggets. So those of you who are maybe in a similar situation can understand how you can still work this to your advantage and get accepted into CRNA school. So I guess I want to start with, what kind of fear did you have going into CRNA applications with a pass-fail nursing program in your past?
Definitely that I wouldn't get accepted. I think that's just a general fear though. But The biggest fear was just that the rest of my application wouldn't even be seen, that pass-fail program would just result in an immediate kind of denial, and I wouldn't have like an opportunity to interview. Some schools won't even accept applications if you have a pass-fail BSN program. So, and I really hadn't found a lot of experiences of students getting into CRNA school with pass-fail programs. So I was hopeful, but it was definitely the biggest anxiety point of the application process.
Okay. I love to point out the fact that it sounds like you did your research and you actually found certain schools that specifically said they will not accept any kind of transcripts from pass fail.
At least one, yes.
Okay. But the other schools, did you actually reach out to see whether they would consider your application, or did you just apply not really knowing?
I didn't. So I didn't reach out to anyone and ask. There were a few, I think, mentions on some schools about pass-fail programs. And I had heard that some transfer as 3.0, others as 2.0, and that some don't, consider that at all in the GPA calculation. I think every school is a little bit different. I didn't know until recently my program calculates the pass-fail as a 3.0. So the GPA that we talked about was without, like, prior to adding all of those pass-fail credit hours as a 3.0. So that kind of definitely would have decreased both my science and my overall GPA for their application consideration. But I definitely just kind of went in blind, like you said, crossing my fingers and hoping for the best.
But it's really interesting that you point that the fact that you found that out after the fact, but I encourage you to do, if you're listening to this, is to try to find this out prior so you can more accurately estimate what your actual GPA is. So realistically now it probably is more like your overall is probably closer to a 3.3, 3.4. Your science is probably more like a 3.5. That'd be like what I would guess if they had to take a 3.0 and average that in approximately, without being 100% accurate, I'm sure. But that being said, having a 3.5 science GPA and a 3.2 overall, 3.3 overall, your science GPA is really the strong suit, which I think is what really, really helped in this situation. But you guys, finding this out prior to applying will really save you time and frustration. So I do encourage you to ask, to reach out, to say, hey, how do you interpret a pass-fail BSN degree? Is it a 2.0? Is it a 3.0? And that way it will really allow you to see just how competitive you actually will be when you take in consideration your actual GPA and science and all that stuff. The other thing that I think Sabrina did really well, and maybe you didn't know you were doing this, but you took organic chemistry. You also sound like you took a statistics course, and both of those things, you got an A- in OChem, but what did you get in statistics?
I got an A in statistics. So I had previously taken statistics as a prerequisite whenever I was applying to an MBA program. So I had a couple semesters of MBA courses. And I just remember my advisor for the MBA program kept telling me, you just have to get a C, you just have to get a C. So I think that was like in my head, and I thought that was kind of my last degree. So I got a C, which, would not have been acceptable for CRNA application. So I was able to retake that course and replace that C with an A. And that's kind of a point also that some programs will use both grades when calculating your GPA, and others will actually replace it.
Yes. Another really great thing to know prior to applying to a program, just so you have a better understanding of where you're going to lie. Some schools will not let you guys, like some schools don't allow retaking courses. Some schools say, well, I know you retook it, but we don't consider the retakes. We take the original grade, and that's what it is. That's probably not the majority. The majority either will average the two or completely omit the lower one. But I love how you point out that your advisor told you to see. You guys, and now that I'm spending way more time on social media, more than I probably want to, if I'm being perfectly honest. I see mentors preach that. And I don't think they do it in a way to hinder people they're preaching. I think they do it because they think it'll make you feel better about not getting A's, and that's it's okay. And I understand that. Like, and I was a C student, like 100%. There's nothing wrong with C's. However, it doesn't mean that you should accept it, because that means there's so much room that you can grow. There's so much opportunity to improve. And if you're getting C's, if you're getting D's, there's a reason. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person or not smart enough or not good enough or you're not capable. It means there is something that you could be doing differently to improve your understanding, do a different strategy. It means you can, like, think of it as I can do something differently to improve, not as I'm just going to accept it. Because unfortunately, people, and Sabrina mentioned this too, she thought that was it. She's like, this is all I want out of my career. And here you are in CRNA school, and people, you change, like your lives, you change. I just had Brian, he's 48. I think he said he's 48. Gosh, I hope I'm not aging him. 43, maybe he's 43. Either way, he's in his second career and he's just now starting his CRNA journey. He had no idea he was going to go back for CRNA school. He has been, I mean, so you guys, don't close doors is what I ultimately want to get at. Just don't close doors. So if I'm reaching you, if you're still really early on in your nursing career, college career, keep the doors open, figure out a way, like get the extra resources, the help you need to make sure you're doing better than getting a C. It's not that C's itself are bad, but if you ever want to advance your career later on in life, you have an uphill battle ahead of you. And it saddens me when I see amazing nurses, amazing candidates not get in over that. It's not, I obviously, that's one of my passions, is to help those students, but it's very hard. And a lot of times when you face failure after failure, it's hard not to like take that personally, and hard to just keep coming back and for more, it's kind of like beating yourself up over and over again. And some people are better at handling that than others. So let's get off that soapbox, but yeah, I think those are all really great points. And when you didn't get one interview, but you also gain acceptance at the other school, what do you think? I guess I want to back up. What do you think, and I know you might not know, but you know why you didn't get asked to interview at the other school at all?
I don't. And I didn't follow up
Okay.
either. I was kind of, when I got the interview with my current program, I was just really focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
So had I not gotten accepted, I definitely would have followed up with both programs and kind of, developed a strategy for the next application cycle. And at that point, I would have done, more research about how the WGU degree would have factored into GPA, and, just kind of developed a plan of what I needed to do to improve my application. But yeah,
no, that's great. And I think, because I'm curious to even know if the other school, if maybe they don't see that as acceptable. So maybe that would have been a program that maybe should never have been applied to in the first place, or whether they saw it as a 2.0. Like you said, some schools will do that,
right,
which really drug you way below. And then you're like, wow, now your GPA is too low to really be competitive anymore. So just interested, but those are my thoughts going through my brain right now about that. But now coming back to the school you were accepted into, what do you think? I mean, if you had to pinpoint anything, and I know you're like, I don't know these answers, but I just want to just hear your opinion. What do you think helped you gain that interview?
Yeah, so definitely I don't know anything about how my school makes their decision process. This is all kind of speculation or opinion on my part, but from, research and talking to programs, attending information sessions, it really does vary how programs, choose their applicants, and you don't really know all of the ins and outs of that. I knew within 5 minutes of the information session with my program that it was my number one choice. And then I spoke to several current students, several alumni from the program, and it just really kind of reiterated that feeling that that's where I wanted to be. And I feel very lucky to be there now. I think possibly, personal statement, that's kind of your one opportunity to tell your story outside of your academic and, professional experiences. Writing my personal statement was probably the hardest part of, the application process, even more so than OCHIM. And I did a personal statement review because I had so much to say, and I just, wanted to be as concise with it and like the key points. So that was really helpful in making me feel more confident about it. And then maybe just having, that kind of like diverse background. Some programs are really more so focused on really getting to know you as a person outside of, just your GPA and GRE scores. And so that's how I felt my program was. Again, I don't know 100%, but I think that was definitely a key component.
Yeah. Some of the things that Sabrina shared that I really want to highlight in on is that she went to open houses, that she connected with program faculty. They knew who she was. She knew current students. She knew alumni. You guys, that's huge. And I preach it all the time. And it's not all about who you know. I'm not saying that just because you know someone doesn't mean you're going to gain acceptance. But they, like Sabrina also mentioned, they care more about who you are as a person than just your academics, because they know that to thrive and succeed in their program is going to take more than just being a good student. It's going to take someone with emotional intelligence, someone who can adapt, someone who is resilient, and they can gather this by meeting you, by talking to you. And, they also, I've been told by program directors too, they pick cohorts, they judge personality types and say, will this cohort work well together? Because they know also a big part of success is that you will rely on your classmates. That's going to be your tribe, right? For the next 3 years. And they want to make sure that they pick a well-blended team, essentially. So they got to know her from the open houses. Current students got to share advice. And I'm sure that helps you have a better understanding as to how the program can serve you as a current student. So I love all of that advice, really, really good advice. Again, it's not just about your academics, it's who you are. And I also love the fact that you didn't shy away from getting insight in your personal statement. Sabrina's right. That is your one chance to shine outside of just your resume and what you look like on paper. It's how they get to know you before they meet you. And I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but essentially the personal statement is a way for them to see who you are without actually meeting you. And so it's so important that, if you have so many ideas and so many things you want to share, that you really hone in and focus on, what are they asking? Because if you don't follow the prompt, that's like you don't follow directions. It's kind of a big red flag to the programs. Also, just consolidate your thoughts, because it might sound really good to you, but to a complete stranger who knows nothing about you, they might not understand what you're trying to say, or might not be able to follow it, because it makes sense to you because you know you really well, right? You know your whole story, but they don't. So having a different perspective, someone else who doesn't know you at all, read your personal statement will really allow you to say, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or, oh, that's some good insight. It just allows you to do better at displaying who you are in a very brief way, which is what they want. So I love the fact that you utilize that service. You also, we'll go into the interview next, but you did the same thing where you did a mock interview. So essentially you're utilizing resources that are available to you to improve and assess what I call blind spots, because we all have blind spots. Even the best applicants have blind spots. So what now would you say, if you had to say, like, what do you think, how the interview went, as far as, did you know, like, I know you got waitlisted originally, but did you think the interview went well, or how did you think that played out?
So the interview was definitely one of the most intense days of my life. It was via Zoom. It was all day. And I think the mock interview definitely, it was, practice, and practice makes you feel more prepared, and feeling more prepared makes you feel more confident. And all of that, I think, definitely was a big factor. The best part about the interview, I felt like, again, they were trying to get to know me as a person. There were certainly questions in the interview that I wish I would have, had a better answer to, or, been a little bit more prepared on that specific topic. But overall, like at the end of the day, I felt fairly confident that there wasn't a lot I would have changed, or I didn't feel like I was unprepared. I didn't feel terrible about it, if that makes sense. I don't think anyone really leaves an interview going, oh, I got that in the bag. But definitely like confidence is key. And then just, I know people say like be yourself, but that was a big component. There were many parts of the interview where it kind of felt like we were just chatting and getting to know each other, and just kind of realizing that they do want to get to know you, and they want to find people who are going to do well in their program and represent the program well and complete the program and pass the certification exam. And so that was, that part I felt confident about for sure.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. No, I love that. And I love the fact that you said that most people are not going to just assume they have it in the bag. Because and it's not about perfection. And I love the fact that you said, I could have done this better, and I could have answered this better, but I did the best I could. And these programs understand that too. You guys are not looking for perfection. They're looking how you adjust and adapt to being wrong. They look to see, how defensive do you get? Do you get embarrassed? Are you okay with not knowing? How do you justify what you do know? And so they're really assessing, they do try to a certain extent stump you, because they want to see how it feels and how you react to being stumped, right? So, and I also want to kind of back up too. I know we before we recorded, we briefly touched on the GRE. You have a very good GRE score, 316. But I would love to hear, that's really hard to achieve. So many people struggle on this test, and some people purposely avoid applying to programs just so they don't have to take this test. You did also share with me that you didn't really prepare that much. So it was kind of one of those things where you did genuinely do well on it without much preparation, but you said you also think you had an understanding of how to answer GRE questions. And I'm curious, you piqued my interest because I want to know. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how to take that test.
Sure. So it's kind of like in the beginning of nursing school, when you take that first nursing school test and you're like, there's a meme, it's like, which orange is the most orange? So really understanding kind of the strategy behind the GRE, because ultimately I'm speaking mostly about the quantitative section right now, but there is not enough time to really work through every single one of those questions. And I believe it's Magoosh has some videos and some strategies about how to approach those questions, like some of them kind of working backwards as opposed to trying to work forwards with the question, how some of them you can look at and eliminate, multiple responses just by kind of understanding the way the math works. And so kind of having that kind of knowledge about how to approach the questions was definitely beneficial. I watched a YouTube video that went over like different, like the math sections and each type of math that was on the GRE on the way to the GRE. I don't recommend that as your study strategy, but like I said earlier, it was my two like real study days were when Texas froze. I was travel nursing in West Texas at the time and working like a contract that I was working 48 to 60 hours. So my time was fairly limited. And then having no power or heat or water definitely took over my study days. So, but when I sat down to take the test, I just tell myself, like, there's nothing else you can do right now. You have prepared as much as you can until this moment. And, anxiety isn't going to serve that. So With the GRE, if you don't do as well as you hope, you can take it again. And when you take it a second time, you have experience, like you're more experienced the second time. So you can kind of know where you need to improve and kind of focus your study strategies so that if you take it a second time, you have, again, that confidence going into it.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And I also know you mentioned how you think another thing that really served you well in the GRE is the fact that you didn't let your anxiety get the best of you. And that's also going to serve you as an SRNA, as a current student, because so many, students they're good students. It's not anything to do with their ability, but it's they get the best of themselves by like, this is life and death. Oh my gosh, versus like you just said, worst case scenario, you'll just find ways to improve and try again. So that kind of attitude is going to serve you not only in academics, but in clinical too. So I love to highlight that as well, you guys, as far as, try to bring yourself back to a place of this is figure outable, right? You're going to figure it out and, you do the best you can with the study techniques you have. I love the idea of strategy though, versus just trying to learn it all, because some of this information for the GRE is stuff that you haven't probably learned since high school, and it's overwhelming to try to reteach it to yourself. So strategy, as far as, based on this type of math they're asking you, yeah, maybe it would automatically eliminate a few options. So even if you got somewhat close, you could gather what the right answer may be. Do you happen to remember what the name of that YouTube channel was, or what the?
I don't, but I can find it and send you a link.
Okay, I'll put it, because I'm sure I have some of my listeners are like, I want to know that YouTube video.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure we link to that for you guys. So I guess we'll kind of wrap this up in a sense that, like, what other factors do you think you contributed to your success other than, I know we already touched on, GPA, GRE, some of the classes you took, but is there anything else that you think you would love to add to this as far as things that helped you?
I think, the diversity of my background was helpful. When I had the opportunity, I attempted to kind of but highlight the positives of the pass fail program. I went to WGU. It was in the very beginning of the pandemic. I had been travel nursing as a PICU nurse. All of the travel contracts were being canceled. I had moved to California. I couldn't find a job without a BSN. So it was kind of my only option at the time. So I was able to complete the WGU BSN very quickly. I sat down and only did coursework for 6 straight weeks. I took one day off. I also, other than flying to Indiana, packing everything into a pod to move to California. But I highlighted that I had, motivation and the discipline to sit down and really just accomplish these things. That was 6 weeks and this is 3 years, but it's just like demonstrating success that, you have like the ability to do what you set your mind to. And I think really explaining your why about, why you want to be a CRNA, understanding the career, all of the things that go along with that. So I was introduced to the CRNA as a profession during my paramedic school rotation. That was the first time I learned that CRNAs existed. And I thought, wow, this is like the greatest job ever. And it took, 10, 11 years until it was time for me to actually be able to apply. But it was always, there. It was always kind of like my plan or my intention. So just understanding the profession, talking to CRNAs, and really being able to convey like why why you want to do this, and that you understand how, and you don't have to understand how difficult it is going to be from like an actual experience perspective, but understand that it is going to be difficult and that you're willing to put forth the effort and the sacrifice that comes along with CRNA school.
I love that. So did you bring up the WGU degree during your interview process and explain it then?
I briefly touched on it in my personal statement. That was one thing in the review because it was my big anxiety point, I felt like I really needed to explain it. And after the review, I got it down to one little sentence, I think. But so I believe it was mentioned at some point again. I think I brought it up. Yeah. Just kind of, again, just highlighting, positives.
Right. No, I love that. And we often preach to a lot of our students too, if you have something in your past that you think may hinder you, it's kind of a way to, like saying, address the elephant in the room. Talk about it, share, because it's probably on their mind too. So if you take the bigger position to say, yeah, I know this exists in my past, but this is what I've done to overcome it. And this is how I see this as a strength. Like you said, you were disciplined, determined to get, your BSN as quickly as possible so you could work, so you can keep working as an ICU nurse. So while it might not have been ideal for your passion and dream to become a CRNA, you at the time did what you had with the resources that were available to you. And so, yeah, I think that's great that you showed that as one of your strengths. I also love the fact that you've been so persistent in this career path for such a long time, because schools love seeing that, because it really shows that you're passionate and that you're determined, that you have resilience to get where you are, even if it was 11 years down the road. So I think that that's a really great thing to highlight as well, that the program knew that you were serious, right? Versus someone who said, well, I just discovered CRNA during the not that there's anything wrong with this, but I discovered a CRNA during the pandemic and here I am, so that probably has happened to quite a few people, but and that's fine. I'm not saying that you won't get into school if that's your story. So please don't take that offensively, but I'm just showing the fact that you've been on this road for a very long time, and you were able to highlight that in your interview, and also display your deep understanding of what a CRNA does, and highlight your unique background and experience in the sense that you have some unique skills that others might not have with your EMS and your paramedic experience. So, and the fact that you were both adult and PICU, I think that's great too. Not all schools take PICU or NICU experience, but the fact that you have PICU means you're probably much more astute to dosing and weight-based dosing kind of calculations, and fluid and all that, and the physiology of a child, of a toddler, is very different than an adult. So I think that's really cool and unique background that you possess as well. And I'm not saying you have to go out and get PICU NICU experience, so please don't do that. But I'm just saying, own what you have and sell it for what it is, and highlight the fact that some people are nervous about having PICU experience. No, be proud of that and sell it to the programs as a strength, and it will serve you well. If you take it that viewpoint that it's a strength versus something that's going to hinder you, then they will see it too. You just have to be able to display that to the interview panel. So I guess, what advice, kind of sounding off here, what advice would you give to someone who has pass fail in their history, but wishes to pursue CRNA, if you could give them any kind of advice?
I think, as we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, definitely reach out to the programs. Had I been proactive about that prior to applying, maybe I would have felt slightly less anxious about it. And then just, I think, focus on the positives, highlight your strengths. It's one thing in your background. And then find other things to add to your strengths. So take extra science courses. For me, I had that previous bachelor's degree, I had some graduate coursework. And so when my entire GPA was factored, that 3.0 was added to 200 and some credit hours, as opposed to just 120, it being a chunk of 120. So I think that was definitely helpful on my end. And then get involved in your community, be an advocate for your profession, shadow, network, join nurse, professional organizations, and just, again, just find things that are strengths. The other thing was like traveling. I travel nursed for 2 years of my 3 years as a nurse. And I think someone joked that I had like the trifecta of, obstacles into CRNA school with PICU, travel, and WGU. But all of those things also had, significant strengths or positives. Travel nursing, like you're going into a new place frequently, you're quickly learning how to adapt in a completely different system, and figuring out how to use your resources. You're proving that you are personable. It really develops some emotional intelligence, and that's kind of a buzzword. And so there are positives and there are strengths to everything. You can't go back and get grades from a pass fail program, so just kind of find the things that you can do.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that you highlighted the fact that no matter what your situation is, there's always something you can look to do, and then you own the positives. Like you said, every situation is going to have a positive and a negative. Well, what's the positive? And then highlight that. And I love how you stress the fact that you're adaptable, that you went to these environments where you didn't know anyone and you have to make quick friends, right? And let them kind of essentially prove yourself very quickly, and, understand where the resources are. That's very, very key. And you're going to be doing that time and time again as a anesthesia student. You're going to be changing clinical sites pretty frequently. And it's very, if you're not quick at adapting, it can be very overwhelming. So I love the fact that you highlighted that was one of your strengths, that that you can succeed in that because you already have that experience. Now, travel nursing, one of the big things with travel nursing that could hinder you, that I know gets talked a lot about inside of CRNA School Prep Academy, is the leadership, the lack of leadership, lack of committee work and things like that. But you guys, there are other ways to get leadership experience. Sabrina was going to conferences. She said, getting involved with your nurse associations. The AACN is a great place to get involved. There are tons of volunteer opportunities out there within just that one place, the AACN. Being a part of CRNA School Prep Academy also helps. The fact that you're networking, going to conferences. You went to our conference last fall, and got to touch base with those programs. So being involved any way, shape, or form, whatever that looks like, find something that works for you, that suits you, that you'll thrive in, and just don't give up. Seek out guidance early and often, and find a way to strategize and improve. You can do this. I'm going to sound off with that. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I appreciate you. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We will see you next week.
Thanks, Jenny.